Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, this is the Spitfire that I built in a recent video, crashed as you can see, and today we're going to make a diorama of the crash site. So, let's get on with it. Right, so what I've got here is a piece of 3mm hardboard that I'm going to use as the base. And so what I want to do first of all is just roughly put the plane on so I know where I'm going to put everything. And what I've also got is this. This is a part of a moulding that I made a while ago. I don't know if you've seen the video on how to make a rubber mould, but this is something that was cast from that mould. And I'm going to use this as a rock in the bed of the river. And the idea is that the plane has landed, skidded through the water, hit the rock and nosed into the bank, and that's what's knocked the wing off. So that all looks fine. So basically the plane is going to be nosed into the bank, the tail will be partially reattached like so, and then the wing will be basically laying off to one side. So now I've got that roughly where I need it to be, I shall get a pencil and I'll mark roughly where the bank is. And that's roughly where our bank will be. I know this rock is a bit kind of jagged to be in the water. I mean, normally a rock in water would be smoothed down, but I might knock some of these edges off, but we'll see. But yeah, that's given us a rough layout anyway. So what I've got here is a scrap of EVA foam that I've just cut off of a piece, and I'm going to use this as the bank. So I'll cut this to length and then shape the edge to make it a bit more bank-like. Right, so I've cut this more or less to size, and I've just roughed the edge, I've rounded the edge over a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is stick this down, and that will give us our bank, and it will give us something to build up off of to have the plane stuffed into it. To stick the EVA down, I'm going to use this impact glue. It's contact adhesive. It will stick it down really quickly and it won't come off again. Now I've spread the contact glue on both pieces. I'll put a bit of masking tape on the board just because I don't want to get it all over the place. So basically the trick is now we leave this till it goes dry or feels dry, and then when we stick the two pieces together they'll bond instantly and they'll never come apart. Right, so these pieces are ready to be stuck together now, and you've got to be fairly careful when you do this because this is instant contact adhesive. Basically once these two sides touch, that's it, they're bonded forever. So if you're using this kind of glue, make sure you get everything lined up because you only get one go at it. So here we go. That's it, that's glued forever now. So to make the base of this I'm going to use it's interior filler, just cheap stuff, and I'm going to put a layer of this on here to give us a base to work on, give it a bit of texture, and also to build up the bank a little bit more. So that's next. Right, so I've got a coat of filler on this now. I've built up the bank a little bit. I've also started to shape some bits where the plane's hit, where the mud sort of pushed out. So now we just leave this to dry, and then we can get on with putting some textures and things on it. Right, while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to try a little experiment. I've got a little scrap of MDF here, it's just an offcut from the scrap bin, and I want to try something. This gravelly looking substance is cat litter. I bought a bag of cat litter from the pound shop to try it out. It's full as earth, like compressed full as earth. And what I want to do is I want to see how it works as gravel, because it might work as gravel or it might just fall to pieces. So I'm going to put a bit on here and then I'm going to put some scenery glue on it and see what it does. So let's give it a go. So I'll just kind of spread it out a little bit. But you see, it looks very gravelly. I'm quite pleased with the way it looks, but like I said, because it's made of full as earth, it's entirely possible it might just fall to pieces when we put it. Might just turn into a paste basically when we put the glue on it. So let's just mooch that around a bit. This is the scenery glue I made in a previous video, so let's see what happens. Because if this works, I want to use it as the base of the river, or the bed of the river I should say. Well, so far it doesn't look that bad. It seems to be holding its shape. Yeah, doesn't seem to be too bad. Right, now we'll let all that dry and we'll see what it looks like when it's dried out, but so far that's looking pretty good. My main concern was that the cat litter would just basically dissolve in the glue, which it hasn't so far. So yeah, let's let it dry out and see what happens. So this has had time to dry now and it's actually worked really well. That is on there absolutely solid. And it's held its shape really well. I was, like I say, I was worried it was going to, you know, fall to pieces, but it hasn't. That's worked really well. So I think that is now giving me the base for our river. So when we come time to put to build the base, yeah, that's a lot cheaper than buying, you know, modelers products. I mean, I bought a bag, well, I'll show you the bag. That's the bag. It's 3 kilograms and that came from the pound shop. So yeah. Right, now we can get on with the rest of it. So this is the rock that's going to be in the river. What I'm going to do now, while I'm waiting for everything else to dry, is paint up this rock to make it a bit more rocky. Right, so let's turn back to this again. This is more or less dry now and covered in static grass. So what I want to do now, before it dries fully, is just go over it with a bit of water and smooth it out a little bit. So here I've just got some water in a pot. I'm just going to put some on my finger and just rub it over and just take some of the rough spots out of it. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, it's just to get rid of some of the high spots. The other thing is I'm going to put the base material on this in a minute, and I want just to dampen this slightly so that it sticks well. So for the base colours I'm going to use these acrylics. This is a Payne's grey and this is an emerald green. This is transparent, this is opaque, so I'll put this down first and then I'll put some of this around the edges. It's going to have like base material over it, but this is just to show there's no white spot showing through it. Right, I'll blend that a little bit more and then we'll leave it to dry. Right, I've just sanded this down a little bit, not too much, just to take the really rough spots off. And now I'm going to paint the top part here with this brown house paint. And this is just again so that there's no white spots showing through when we put the grass and everything on. Right, so I've let this dry, I've misted over it with a bit of grey just to kind of unify all the colours. And what I want to do now is put the plane on and think about how I'm going to do the area where it's hit. So I'm going to do the pathway first because that's going to have static grass and I want to get that done so that I can get it all cleaned up before I do the riverbed. And then we can put all the river together and get all that out of the way. Now, what I'm going to do is because there's going to be a gravel base to the river. There's some gaps underneath, but I'm going to fill those with gravel, like the plane's pushed it up against the bank as it's hit. So what I want to do is just deal with this area around here first. So I've got some of these grass tufts in various colours, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a few of those on, like the turf has been pushed back. So these are self-adhesive, so I'll use some of these and just stick them on around here to simulate where the earth's been pushed away. I think they look quite nice. And I'll put a few more tufts around various places. I've got some flowers as well that I'll put on just to like liven up the bank a bit, and then I'll put some static grass on the rest of it and the path. So these are the flowers. I'll just put a few of these on just here and there just to brighten up a bit. Right, and now I'm going to put some static grass down along the edges and then I'll do the path in the middle. So this is Mod Podge mat. I'm going to put some of this down to put the grass on. Now for the messy bit. So in the static grass applicator I've got a mix of 2 and 4mm meadow grass. Right, I think I need to tip that up a bit to get the rest on. Oh, this is so messy. Right, okay. So now what I want to do is knock the excess off. And now I'm just going to use a cocktail stick and just kind of moosh the grass around a little bit, just so that it's not quite so uniform. Especially down here on the banks, I want to try and get it like it's growing up a little bit. Right, I think that looks pretty good. Now I've got to clean up the mess. Right, now I need to put some more glue down the middle and put the path on. For the path, I'm just going to use some more of this sand. And I'm also going to put on some of this Woodland Scenics blended turf. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of this on the grass. I find it, I've tried it a few times and it seems to really help this static grass. It makes it look a lot more realistic. And this is Woodland Scenics burnt grass, which again is like a wonder stuff. It's really good for blending everything together. It just seems to work really well. So and I'll just put a little bit on the path as well. And also what I've got here are some leaves. These are actual leaves that I dried and then blitzed in a blender. So I'll just put a little bit of this on as well. Now before I put any glue on, I just want to make sure I get it all off of here, because I don't want leaves and things stuck to the riverbed. Not yet anyway. The reason, I mean, there might be a few bits on there, but the thing is, because we're going to put the gravel on after, if there are any little bits on the riverbed, it doesn't really matter. And now we can take our scenery glue and basically nail it all down. And here I'm just mopping up the excess glue with a bit of kitchen roll. Right, I think it looks pretty good. Now we can leave this to dry and then make a start on the riverbed. Right, that glue is more or less dry now. I've got the model up on some bottles at the moment, paint bottles, and I've got the plane roughly where I want it. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to put the gravel bed of the river on next, and so I want to make sure, because before I do that I need to glue this rock down, so I want to make sure I'm getting it, you know, pretty much in the right place. So, and I think that looks fairly good where it is. So what I can do now is put down a blob of glue and stick it down. So let's just move this wing out of the way. So I'm going to just use some Mod Podge because it's handy, and I'll just put a blob of glue down like that. Might put a bit more down actually. It doesn't matter if it scooches out from the sides a bit, because there's going to be gravel all piled up around it. So let's get rid of this wing for a minute, we don't need that. I'm going to keep the plane handy because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pile the gravel up against the bank, so like the plane's hit the gravel and pushed it into the bank. So I just want to have the the plane here to reference. So, okay, let's move that out of the way for a second. Put that over there. Right, let's start putting our gravel on. So I've just put some in this cup just so it's easier to handle than this big bag. Right, now for the tricky bit. Right, I think that looks fairly good. I'm just thinking actually it might make sense to leave the plane there when I glue the thing down and actually glue the plane down with it. I mean, after all, what could possibly go wrong? Let's see what happens. As I mentioned earlier, I've got the model up on 4 bottles, and the reason for that is because I'm going right to the edge with the glue, and it's more than likely that some of this glue will drip off the edge, and what I don't want to do is glue the model to the bench. Before I go too far with the gluing, I'm going back to the Woodland Scenics blended turf, and what I'm going to do is put some around some of the rocks and things to act like moss under the water. This tool is actually a cuticle tool that I bought from the pound shop, but it makes a great little shovel for putting this stuff on. Right, I think that will do us. I'm putting quite a lot up the top here by the plane because obviously there's a big pile of the litter, and I want to make sure that it goes right through the whole thing and sticks it right down to the bottom. Right, I think that'll do us for now. Let's leave that to dry. Actually, one more thing I'll do, I'm going to glue the tail on while it's here as well. I'm not going to put the wing on yet. Basically I want to let this dry, and there's a few other little bits I want to put on before I put the wing on. And the other thing is as well that I've got to be careful of is this glue has a lot of isopropyl alcohol in it, and it will remove the paint if I'm not careful. So yeah, I think it's best to leave it to dry as much as possible. So while that's drying, I've just put it to one side, and what I've done is I've got here a cotton bud, and I've just pulled one of the ends off, and I'm just separating out the cotton. And what I'm going to do with it, or what I'm going to try and do with it, is make some like pond weed. So I'm just pulling the head of the cotton bud apart, and what I've got here is some acrylic green ink. And what I'm going to try and do, I don't know if it's going to work or not, is I'm going to try and dye this cotton, well, this is sap green, so I want to turn it into like pond slime. Yeah, I think that might work. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this in a little pot with some water, and then I'm going to dip these pieces in and then lay them out. Yeah, I think that's working quite well. I'll make a few more. We can leave those to dry as well. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking these pieces that I made and just laying them on in various strategic spots. But what I also want to do, and this is going to be the tricky bit, is I want to have a bit over the wing. So the idea, as the plane's gone through the water, it's picked up some of the pond weed. And I think I'll just put a drop of scenery glue on those as well, just to make sure they stay in place. Got to be careful not to, yeah, see the trouble is I think if I do that it's gonna, the alcohol's gonna wash the ink away. I'll wait until they've dried and then I'll glue them down. Right, so I've just placed the wing, and the last piece I need to put on for now is the undercarriage cover, which has been pulled off. So I'm going to bend it up a little bit. And then I'll put that somewhere. Not there. I think there. So I'll just put a little drop of Mod Podge on. There we go. Right, now we just need to leave everything to dry, and then we can think about putting the resin on. Now what I've got here are some Edward brass-in machine guns. They're 1/72 scale Browning MGs, and the reason I've got these is because I was thinking about where the wing was torn off. It's actually torn off right next to one of the gun bays, so I thought it might be an interesting idea to have one of these guns hanging out of the wing. So I'll paint one of these up and see what it looks like, and we'll go from there. Right, so I'm just looking at the instructions. Obviously we're going to go for the fixed gun, and yeah, these are absolutely tiny. They're very detailed, I'll give it that, but I think this is going to be fun trying to put these together. Let's see how we get on with it. When you're working with resin, you probably need to use a razor saw to cut it, but yeah, let's see how we get on. Right, so now that gun's dry, I'm going to stick it on. The idea is that when the plane's hit, the shock of the impact has kind of torn the gun out of the wing. So I'm going to put that up here. So I'm just going to put a little drop of Mod Podge on just to hold it in place. It doesn't need a lot, because that'll dry clear. And that can go like that. I've also got an ammo belt, because I'm going to have a short bit of ammo belt trailing out back into the wing, so as the guns come out it's pulled the ammo belt out, but that hasn't arrived yet, so I'll put that on afterwards. I've also got a couple more bits of the metal sprue that I used for the wing spars, so I'm just going to bend up a couple of pieces of that and just sort of scatter them about to look like bits have been pulled out. So these can literally be just... But when I painted them, I deliberately didn't prime them, so that as I was manipulating, the paint would scratch off to leave like shiny bits. So these can go on as well. And again, I'll just stick these down with a drop of Mod Podge. And now we can leave all that to dry. Right, I think we're about ready to think about putting the resin on now. So I'm going to make a dam around the edge using masking tape, and then we'll try and pour some resin. It's really cold in the workshop at the moment, so I'll have to try and warm the resin up first. But to start with, let's get it dammed up, and then we can go from there. Right, so that's the tape on. Now I've got to warm up the resin and try and get it to pour. That should be fun. So I've got some polyester resin in the pot here. I've tinted it using an actual polyester dye. You can put acrylics in and tint it, but this is the proper stuff. I mean, I do a lot of casting, so I have this kind of stuff. What I've got now is, because as I mentioned, it's really cold here in the workshop, and so what I'm doing is I've just got the resin in this bath of warm water just to warm it up a bit. You'll also notice that I'm wearing gloves. That's because this dye, if you get it on your skin, it will never come off, so always wear gloves if you're doing this. So what I'm going to do now is just wait for this resin to warm up a little bit before I put the catalyst in, and then we can pour it and see what happens. Right, this resin has warmed up quite a bit now, so I think we can pour it. I'm going to put the catalyst in now and then stir it up. Now, one thing I'll say before I start, you'll see this looks quite opaque, this colour, but what you have to remember is that the resin in this pot is about 2 inches deep. When it's poured on the model, it'll be less than 1/4 of an inch deep, so it'll be a lot more transparent. So now I'm going to put the catalyst in and mix it all up. When you're stirring the resin, make sure you stir it slowly and carefully. Make sure you scrape round the sides, scrape the bottom, scrape everything, and mix it thoroughly. Because if you don't, you'll end up with wet spots basically, and they will never ever cure. So make sure you mix it thoroughly. But mix it slowly because you want to try and avoid getting too many air bubbles in it. Okay, this is mixed. Let's start pouring it. What could possibly go wrong? Right, now we'll leave that to level. I might actually put a little bit more in, but yeah, I think that's more or less where we want it. We'll just leave it to level a bit and then come back and have another look at it. Okay, that's the resin all poured. We don't seem to have any leaks. I think I'm just going to shore up these sides a little bit because they're kind of bowing out a little bit, but that's not really a problem, but it's more aesthetics than anything else. But other than that, I think we're good. Now we can just leave it all to dry. Right, well, I left this overnight and it has cured, which I'm very pleased about. I was slightly concerned because it is bitterly cold in the workshop, and but it has cured very well. As happens quite frequently with polyester resin, it's still slightly tacky to the touch. I find this happens a lot. The resin cures, but it's like if you touch it, it leaves fingerprints. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, normally I would put it in the oven and warm it up, but I don't want to put this in the oven because I'm not sure how it will affect the terrain and all the rest of it. I might have to do an experiment on that one day. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to warm it with a hairdryer for a little while and try and get the surface to completely cure. And then we can start looking at putting the rest of the water effects on. But for now, I'm going to unmask the sides. In previous resin pours that I've done like this using masking tape, I think there's some kind of a reaction between the resin and the tape, the adhesive, and you get the side kind of stays sticky. But I found if you just warm it up a bit, it then cures and it sets fine. So let's take the tape off and see what we've got, and then we can look at what we need to do next. Yeah, this has done the same thing. It seems like the resin, there's something in the tape that the resin doesn't like. But as I said, I've seen this before, and it's quite easily fixable, if you like. But on the whole, I'm very, very pleased with that. That's come out really well. So, as I said, I'll get the hairdryer on it and tidy it up a bit, and we'll go from there. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some of this Mod Podge gloss over the top, and I'm going to use this to create sort of ripples and things. So I'm going to squeeze some of this into a little pot, and then we'll put it on with a brush. Right, now same as before, just let it dry. Right, this is pretty much dry now. There's still a couple of little bits that need a bit more drying, but it's dry enough to continue. What I've got here is some Crawford's oil paint and white, and I'm just going to use it to create a few little white caps. I mean, the water's not moving fast, but just a few bits where it's flowing around things, just to make it a bit more interesting.
Drop the wall.
And this is a makeup brush that came from a set from the pound shop, and I'll just use that just to blur it a bit. Alright, I think that'll do. The nice thing about using oil paints in things like this is if you get it wrong, or if you don't like the way it looks, you can just wipe it off and start again. But I think that looks pretty good. And with that, I would say we're pretty much done. The only last bit that needs to go on is the ammo belt that's going to go here, but I'm still waiting for that to turn up. So as soon as that gets here we can put it on, but now we just leave it, let it dry a bit more. There's still a few little bits left to dry, and that'll be pretty much finished. So what I've got here are some photo etch ammo belts. They're absolutely tiny. I'm going to use these for the gun that's been pulled out of the wing. So I might paint it up, I might not. I'm going to have a look on the model and see what it looks like first, and then we'll go from there. So this is the box that the diorama is going to sit on, and I've got a stencil here. It's just a cheap one I got from Amazon, and I'm going to use that to put the title on the front. Right, that doesn't look too bad. It's not quite in the centre, unfortunately. I did measure it out, but I must have made a mistake when I measured it. Never mind. It looks fine. Now I'm going to give it another coat of gloss varnish over the top, just out of a rattle can, and that'll be us finished, I think. And here is the finished article. I am very, very pleased with the way this came out. It wasn't quite what I envisaged when I first started, but I kind of revised the design as I was planning this in my head, and what I ended up with in my head is pretty much what I've ended up with in reality. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with this. I think this is the largest diorama I've done with water effects. It's certainly one of the most modified planes that we've done, and yeah, just on the whole I'm really pleased with how this has come out. So I hope this has been of interest to you. It's certainly been very good for me, and I'll see you on the next video. So, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. Bye.